Kings and Raptors tonight. The second night of the back-to-back for Sacramento, coming off the 123-103 loss last night in Philadelphia. Quick turnaround for everybody, including you, Kayte. Thank you so much for joining us today. No Dave for you. I have to, I guess, apologize. Maybe you're thankful for that. I'm not sure, Kayte. But anyways, it's good to talk to you. And how are you holding up? This was a quick turnaround.
Good morning, Scotty.
Good morning.
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, this is, you kind of get used to this kind of on the road. And this is a tough road trip. This is a brutal travel trip. And we got into Canada last night and went through customs and got to the hotel. And I've got about 5 hours of sleep under my belt. So that is not bad.
Well, we appreciate you making the time for us. What's your sense of the trip? Obviously, it's 1-3. Great win in Cleveland. The great closeout. Hasn't been so great on Sunday in New York, and certainly yesterday wasn't great either. Do you just take it's a tough road trip, or is there something more to it right now?
No, I mean, it's a tough road trip. I said it on the broadcast last night. This road trip is like going through, the defensive gauntlet. It's wild how good the teams are that the Kings are playing in terms of, their defense kind of being their staple. You look at the Bucks, Cleveland, I think, the Bucks number one, Cleveland number two. New York ranks, 11th overall in the season, but the last 5 games, they're the best defensive team in the league. You've got Toronto tonight, who is, that is their staple. They really muck up games. And so, the Kings are just kind of going through it a little bit right now. And then Philly is fantastic defensive team as well. I think ranked 4th overall. So you just kind of look at what you're facing, and the Kings have really, really struggled to create easy plays for each other. Their assists on this trip are just way, way down. I think ranking 30th in the league over the span, and they're one of the best teams in terms of creating assists and easy looks for each other. So I think that has a little bit to do with it. But also, I just feel like this team has kind of been rattled a little bit with injuries. De'Aaron finally came back last night. You've got Keegan Murray playing through a thumb injury that he's going to be dealing with for about the next 6 weeks. And Terrence Davis coming back, but not really being in a rhythm. It's just been one of those points in the season where everyone's getting a little bit kind of worn down. You're getting these little injuries that are starting to pile up, and you just got to take it for what it is, and you got to play the schedule. But I think that, if they can escape this trip with a 3-3 record, I think that would be a really successful trip considering the competition.
Kings Keller analyst Kayte Christensen joining us this morning from the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Kayte, you want to go back to what you're saying about the offense kind of stagnating. How much of that do you attribute to De'Aaron Fox kind of playing with the hurt foot right now, which has really hampered his ability to get downhill and kind of just run that offense the way he normally does?
I think it's part of it, right? But it's not the entirety of it. You look at even kind of before he's been playing with us now for a while, for about a month. So sitting out those 2 games in Cleveland and New York, it gave him 5 days of rest. And yesterday it really looked like he had, a little bit more pep in his step, pardon the pun. But also I think that even before the Kings left on this road trip, they're going through a stretch right now where their shooting numbers aren't great, and you have to be able to attribute some of that to defenses, but also they're missing open shots that they were making more consistently early in the season. So I think it's just a combination of factors and kind of how the season will have its ebb and flows. And right now they're in this situation where they're getting some good looks, but they're not knocking them down. Those shots are going to start falling. They're going to figure it out. Kevin Huerter is going to figure out, how to be productive. His 3-point shooting numbers are down, but man, he's doing a great job of putting it on the deck and scoring either at the rim or in their mid-range and figuring out how to produce, even though teams are really, really, really focusing right now on how to run him off the line.
Yeah, no, great point. Kevin's under 25% from 3-point land on the trip. The team is just right around 30%. So definitely the shooting numbers have gone down a little bit. Kayte, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this because you played the center position when you were playing professional basketball. As you look at the Kings on this trip, I mean, great teams, granted, but the Kings have been exposed a little bit inside. And when Domas gets in foul trouble, it's really tough for them to compete defensively. What do you think, or do they need to do anything to bulk up what they have inside right now?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, the center position, that you don't get a lot of that, especially these types of centers in the Western Conference. It's not quite the same. Even the way the game is played on the
True.
East is a bit different. And, when you look at Joel Embiid, he's just a monster in every way, shape, and form. I mean, he dropped a 53-piece the game before we faced him. So every team in this league has problems defending him because of his ability to get to the free throw line. But it's interesting that you mentioned kind of Domas and foul trouble, right? The Kings started 0-4 on this season, and in those games, he was in perpetual foul trouble. After the first 6 or 7 games, if memory serves, he kind of figured out how to abstain from some of those, reaching fouls and figure out a way to stay on the floor. But when he is not on the floor, it impacts the Kings just dramatically on both ends, right? Because he facilitates the majority of the offense. And when he's there, it makes it easier for everybody else. De'Aaron Fox has a much easier job of having offense created instead of having to create it for himself. Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, you can go down the list of guys where it's just so much easier for them with Domas on the floor. So the foul trouble last night really hurt in terms of, 4 minutes, he picks up his second foul. And from there, you're just really struggling. So, I know everyone's going to start talking about trades and moves, and we're coming up on tomorrow being the December 15th deadline where guys can start to be moved depending on their contract. And, I think that the way you look at it every season is you're always trying to better your roster. But that's Monty McNair's, department. I'm so glad it is not mine. So I would expect that there would be, some moves made, but let's be realistic. Can you guys name backup centers in this league that would be, I don't feel like there's a long list of backup centers in this league that would be available, right?
No, the list is pretty thin.
It's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were going down the line and stretching it out to Nerlens Noel. That's kind of where we were at earlier in the show, Katie.
Yeah, and I don't. That is not at all the answer, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that Domas plays, finding a backup center that can play like him when he is off the floor is non-existent. So you're going to have to go with someone, and it's a big question. I think everyone is really curious about Richaun Holmes because, he got a big contract. He's really not playing. He's fallen completely out of the rotation, and I don't know what's going to happen there. I think Alex Len would have been very valuable last night just because of his size and experience level. He stepped in big moments last year. The game in Denver really comes to mind where, he stepped in and was fantastic just because he has that experience and that size against big guys like Jokic. But yeah, it's not like there is a lot of multi-talented backup centers in this league that can even do a fraction of what Domas does.
Katie, I want to go back to Richaun real quick because on paper he would be an ideal backup center with his size and athleticism. But as you pointed out, he cannot crack the rotation at all outside of, quote unquote garbage minutes. Is that just simply he does not fit with Mike Brown's offense, or is there other stuff out there as well that's keeping him from getting into the rotation?
It's a good question. I really felt like as soon as Tyrese Halliburton was traded to Indiana, that it really impacted, Richaun's game more than anybody, right? And then, of course, he was missing time anyway with all the things that he was going through off the court last season, which, on a personal level, I'm really happy for him that that's been resolved. And listen, I really like Richaun. He's handling this so incredibly well. The work that he continues to put in and to be ready, and just the positive attitude and practice, games, all of those things. He's handling it well. And I just think to a certain degree that because he is such a pick and roll kind of roll to the rim and a lob type threat, that it's difficult because the center right now is the one that is facilitating the offense versus it being facilitated for him. But he's a valuable piece. And for whatever reason, Mike Brown it doesn't work quite well in his system. So it's just about, fit for some players.
Tonight, Katie, Toronto, obviously on the back-to-back, they've been there since Sunday. The Raptors are without Anunoby tonight, though. That's obviously a big loss for them. So how do you size things up tonight for the Kings?
Well, the Raptors are like pretty much every other team we played on this trip, right? Defense is their calling card. They really muck up the game. You've got Pascal Siakam, who is fantastic.
Well,
And I think over the last 5 or 6 games, averaging over 25 a game. But if you can get him in foul trouble, that's really important. He's going to have to defend Domas, and Domas does so many different things. And this is a disadvantage for Pascal to have to go against Domas. So I'll see how the Kings kind of look to attack that matchup, because he plays over 35 minutes a game. And with their, you mentioned OG Anunoby and the injury to him, he's a big piece of their puzzle. So it should be interesting, because if the Kings can knock down even just a fraction more of their open looks, I think they're going to be in a really good position, because you do not look at this Raptors offense and say, wow, they're scorching hot. No, they muck up the game. A lot of their offense is created off of creating turnovers. And then on the other end, they do not turn the ball over. So they don't give you that option of using their offensive mistakes to create good looks for yourself and open looks in transition. So it's going to be another kind of game similar to the other ones we've seen on this trip.
Well, hopefully it fares better for the Kings, more like Cleveland than certainly New York and Philadelphia. Kayte, is always great stuff. Just curious, what's the weather like in Toronto? You'll be able to get outside at all today?
Well, I'm wearing leg warmers, if that's any indication. Yeah,
I guess no.
It's 1980 in Toronto right now. So
balmy. That's fantastic. Kayte, thank you so much. I appreciate you putting up with us without Dave here today. So.
Oh, you know what? It was an easy day today without Dave. So.
All right.
All right. You guys take care.
Have a great call tonight. That's Kayte Christensen. We love Kayte. She does a great job with the team, and we're so lucky to have her weekly here as a